Memory transcription subject. Chief Hunter Isif. Arxel Rebellion Command. Date. Standardized Human Time. March 9th, 2137. The Yottl's decision was relayed over our comms within minutes of my conversation with General Jones. The marsupial commander didn't sound entirely thrilled at the prospect of saving the Durtan, but humanity had been a major force in pushing for the preservation of the civilian masses on Kalqua. Had the avians been willing to ask, I suspected the predators would have been there for the first wave. The United Nations, stretched across hundreds of light years and multiple engagements, could only warp in a few thousand drones to pad our ranks. They'd been amassing that contingent nearby in case the homogeneity reached out. My rebel fleet brought the most numbers to the table of our trifecta, but that was if Kaiser elected to send us to battle. The Arxel runt was deep in thought at his station. He's never been thrilled about anything that benefits prey. He despises every species in the Federation. The fact that he tolerated Felra, even at the behest of an Arxel superior, was a hefty concession. What is he considering? I lashed my tail with impatience. We need a decision, Kaisel. The United Nations and the Yotl technocracy are moving out. Time is of the essence. Chief Hunter, it is my conclusion that we should take action against these Kolshian warships. Before the crew voices remonstrations, I think we cannot afford to be seen as weak. Kaisel answered, in a voice that sounded more certain than his posture looked. We pursued the Shadow Fleet from below, and letting leaf lickers fight our battles gives us a shameful reputation. They've tried to attack us before at Fal, so choosing this engagement now is optimal, while we have numbers and allies. You do not have a quarrel with aiding the Durtan, in spite of their insults and combat incompetency? The reasons that I was given when asking why humans aid those who despise them were pragmatic. Keeping the Durtan as an active power results in greater numbers to fight the Kolshians, and should improve Terran odds of taking Arthur. It is also beneficial if the Commonwealth must spend more resources attacking Kalqua, rather than us or our limited number of allies. If Earth is under threat, that means they can't afford to spare ships upon our requests. Very well. I agree with your line of reasoning and concede that these aggravating prey have some strategic merit. It is in the interest of the rebellion to thwart the Kolshians' aims, even at the expense of our pride and dignity. Oleg, Lisa, communicate with the Yotl and the United Nations respectively. Tell them that we will join their efforts to assist the Durtan Shield's defense. Oleg ducked his head. Right away, sir. Is there anything else you'd like us to communicate? Not yet. I'll spend our short travel time crafting the appropriate use of our resources. We must minimize our losses for the sake of this movement's continuance. Do you not agree? We agree. If the United Nations has any insight on what role they think is suitable for us, I'll pass that along, Lisa said. I'll also keep an eye out in case the Durtan hail us. Kaisel hissed in annoyance. I doubt they would communicate with any predator, let alone us. I will keep an eye out for the likeliest scenario. These ingrates taking aggressive action against us, when we're here to help. If the Durtan attack us, that will bring a swift halt to any attempts to aid them, whether that is practical or not. The muscles in my jaw tightened and my eyes narrowed. A single shot fired from the shield on the rebel fleet would result in us vacating the system and leaving Kalqua to its fate. Our fleet will not bow to prey hatred like the Terrans do, yes? Arxel must keep some honor, if not pride. Calls of assent echoed throughout the bridge, and I turned my maw toward my readout to dismiss the conversation. The 2 UN soldiers informed our allies that the rebel fleet would join the operation to rescue the Durtan. I circled back to the simulation Jones had given me, and compared it to the current murky sensor data. The Arxel were viewed as a terrifying menace to the average herbivore. I recalled how Kazum's ships had fallen into flighty chaos when we showed up and nipped at their heels. It might serve us to attempt to replicate that response by targeting the 10,000 remaining ships of ordinary feds from the first wave. Even with Kolshian oversight, Arxel warships arriving to slaughter them will bear psychological ramifications. All we need is for a few commanders to panic, and the entire formation could collapse. By comparing Jones's recreation to the current ship data, I pinpointed 2 locales where the first wave's remnants were centered. Just as the Kolshians had targeted the Durtan's weakest link, we should return the favor to achieve the maximum impact. The Yotl's particle beam innovation meant they were the best bet to occupy the Shadow Fleet drones, and the Terrans could take out enemy shielding at each key flank. The engine's hum resonated beneath my feet as we coasted into Kalqua's system. I was drafting a rough briefing of my plan. Ensuring that it was a satisfactory visual aid, I had my subordinates transmitted to both the Yotl and human vessels. I switched open the comms channel once the mission summary was received. Yotl Commander, as you are quite competent in tactics, I imagine you've reached similar conclusions to us. We'll take advantage of those Sayasara-brained instincts the Federation forced on their people, and handle what's left of the first wave, while you keep the real threat away from the planet. Well, looks like humanity is going to cover the Dorton's asses after all. Dumb fucks don't deserve it. Bright side of these orders is we're going to put our hind legs below the caution's tails. The technocracy will be delighted to send the Shadow Fleet back to the shadows. Blow for blow. One of ours has got 10 of them beat. I'll forward what we learned from our scouting forays, and then it's up to us both to pull our weights. I do not anticipate worthy fighters among the Federation's expendables. We'll be hunting lesser pilots. I imagine you are in the same position with those Kolshian drones, yes? Good fortune and good hunting to the Yotl fleet. Likewise, Chief Hunter. Give him a generous helping of Rauch's fire for us. My Yotl counterpart switched off the transmission. I'd be thrilled to sink our charged weapons' teeth into hapless Federation vessels. The rebel fleet split into 2 movement vectors, at my command, in order to strike both of the manned contingents. Hundreds of species have brought forth offerings to the attack fleet, though the neighbouring Malti and Dresden ships appear to be dispensing most of the planet-bound bombs. My best guess was that the Kolshians concocted some rationale that Kalqua would be a threat to their safety, if left alone, and that the Dorton would come for them first. I was highly doubtful the homogeneity was capable of hiding that many Venlo assassins and statues, but Federation loyalists seemed incapable of finding logical discrepancies in any rhetoric from Arthur. Kalqua enlarged in the viewport under our magnification settings, as we cruised within striking distance of the ongoing battle. Evacuation ships launched from the surface, but despite their civilian payloads, the lengthy yet slender silhouettes of multi-tube bombers turned toward them with hostile intent. The Federation crew vessel blew the escaping Dorton inhabitants to confetti before they could clear the atmosphere. In my opinion, departing shuttles would be best off keeping to suborbital skies. That would prevent the civilians from having antimatter range on their metropolitan homes without getting picked off by merciless attackers once visible. Kaiser focused on his sensor array with determined eyes. Sir, the Malti and the Dresden are proving particularly hostile to the native lifeforms. They're carrying most of the high-yield bombs. So I've noticed. We'll target those bombers first. We do not want the Dorton wiped out under the present circumstances, I responded. Lisa cleared her throat. Sir, if I might offer a suggestion, remember how we tipped off the Arxel when the Cockotl and their buddies sailed off into the sunset to kill us all? What are you suggesting? Perhaps I could get our contacts in UN intelligence to send an anonymous tip about the Malti and Dresden's bombing holiday to that Chief Hunter Ithis. If we serve them up on a platter, his profile suggests he's single-minded about proving himself. It's an easy way to weaken 2 Federation loyalists, and to keep them off the Dorton's backs in the event we win. It also gives us a fallback option, and the slim chance that our arrival doesn't scatter their ships to the wind. Granted, that strategy failed to dissuade the delusional Kalsim, but I presume his wires were a little crisscrossed. Good work, Reynolds. The human soldier ducked her head, focusing her intelligent eyes on her display. My warship had locked a distant multi-tube bomber in our sights, and we burned hard across space to catch them. The Dorton's shield were getting pummeled by the overwhelming force, lacking the resources to allocate to their own defense. I could watch the Yotl and Terran vessels off on their separate courses, with the primates showing a disconnect from reality, much like Kalsim. They were hailing Kalqua, despite knowing they were persona non grata in this system. While I wouldn't bother with listening in on that conversation, it was a fair guess that Korji was telling them that predators were anything but welcome in this territory. Oh, I'd rather die than be beholden to the whims of beasts, I imagined the birds squawking, after the Terrans passed along a simple message of being here to help. You humans are just such terrible, bloodthirsty creatures, trying to stop our planet from being bombed. Honestly, that sounded about like what a typical Federation-indoctrinated herbivore would offer in response to humanity's kindness. Sighing to myself, I turned my attention to the battle before us. The multi-tube bomber was cresting toward an open swath of space, but its engines were nothing to marvel at. The majority of its storage was devoted to housing warheads, rather than a propulsion system. Its shape was awkward regardless, not lending itself to maneuverability or acceleration. The other vessel classes would be responsible for its defense, much like a prey herd's mothers encircling their pups. That weakness left the entire contingent tied down to the defense of a specific grouping. The Dresden had spread out some of their own craft as a rear guard, watchful for any attempts to encircle them. I supposed even deluded prey could wisen up to recurring tactical motives, without dogma obstructing them from analyzing predatory behavior. As the multi-bombers alerted to our presence, they pushed their pitiful engines further. Kalqua beckoned them towards orbital range. It wasn't clear exactly how many antimatter warheads had smacked the surface so far, but the devastating explosions were visible from space. Add in the sensor data indicating fallout sites, and it was all but certain that the tally of felled cities had reached triple digits. Arxor Fleet, draw as close to the Dresden ships as you're able to. These vessels have been engaged for a lengthy duration, so they sustain damage. They're not at their strongest. We'll utilize ballistics and point defense systems, where they're especially soft, I ordered. On a psychological level, squaring off with an Arxor at close range, where the Fez could see our menacing visages from their viewport into ours, would strike at their already dwindling morale. The Rebellion's cruisers took charge, zipping in on an erratic course to dodge plasma targeting. With my command ship in the rearguard, Kaiser lined up vulnerable targets for our twin plasma railguns. Our blinding beam pierced through a Dresden strife compartment, and the subsequent reaction culminated in a staggering explosion. I trusted the sensors station to pick out a new target for weapons to mop up, so as our railguns recharged, I turned my gaze back to the front lines on the viewport. Our cruisers had reached their intended destinations, though a few had been on the receiving end of Dresden plasma. With our guns breathing down their necks, the prey crews had begun a hasty course reversal. They were desperate to pad the distance between them and the vicious Arxor. However, backward thrust brought us closer to the slow-moving multi-bombers, which they couldn't afford to sacrifice. Kalqua would take much longer to lay to waste without the party with the most firepower. A satisfied growl rumbled in my throat as I watched our rapid-fire kinetics slice through critical components. The Federation crews dispensed their entire caches of combat missiles in an attempt to push us away, though without targeting, the accuracy was lacking. For every 4 explosives that missed the Rebellion craft, one aimed itself in the right direction. Our point defenses picked off some before they could fully orient on us, and with the close proximity that meant several warheads blew up in the Dresden's face. However, I could still see orange fire erupt across a handful of Arxor holes, alongside the light shows in the void. Tipping the scales in our favor, the volume of lead we were pumping at hostile engines wasn't deflecting harmlessly. Shields were a non-factor at that close of a range. There was only so much force that could be absorbed. Not every bullet stream was enough to incapacitate or implode an enemy, but I was certain it was enough to get the warning bells ringing. "Sir, the message has been passed along to Ithis," Lisa piped up. "Do you want to inform the enemy of this development?" I narrowed my eyes. Negative. Let's keep some meat in the icebox. If we can win this of our own accord, it's strategically beneficial that the Malti and Dresden are unaware of the impending assault, yes? Understood. The toughened exterior the Dresden were presenting was beginning to crumble back into familiar prey dynamics. The remaining ships began to swerve any direction to escape, in the space version of a stampede. It was every fed for themselves, with the Malti a long-forgotten objective amidst their haywire instincts. Whatever the humans had said to the Dorton shield had been enough to get them to play along with our plan, it seemed. The avians had diverted focus to the Shadow Fleet, trusting the loathsome Arxor to handle the first wave leftovers. I was confident that we could deliver on that promise soon, with the enemy's deficits in every category. There are other species among those that came at the Caution's request, but these two are the leaders and are sticking together. If their central core collapses, not only will this contingent be lacking in antimatter, but the other species following them will likely flee as well. Initiative wasn't a word that the Federation military seemed to have in their vocabulary. Kaiser had been diligent in finding lone vessels for us to pick off, and now our entire fleet had a clear angle on our desired targets. The Arxor runt determined that it was time to utilize our missiles. On his command, a barrage booked it toward a trio of multi-bombers. The craft deployed interceptors in the nick of time, but we followed it up with a second barrage. Other rebel warships chipped in, ganging up on targets across the skirmish line. Enemies were being taken out like fires on a rainy night. One after another was puffed out of existence by our combined firepower. The lumbering multi-ships weren't able to run and save themselves as the Dresden had. Their vessels were picked off with cold precision, just as we had dominated them in our past raids. I could feel a tinge of the old powerful feelings coursing through my veins like motor oil. It felt invigorating to command such a lopsided display, and to recapture the role of savior I'd had on Earth months ago. The other Federation craft saw their ringleaders succumbing to our might and decided they'd had enough. Kalqua's extinction was a long-forgotten goal. I watched them beeline toward any open path out of the system. The Shadow Fleet were on their own against 4 powers. "Yotl Fleet, come in!" I barked into my comms link. "We've cleared the manned vessels from the system. While they were expendable to the Federation, it lightens the pressure off of you and the shield. I have a few ships chasing down stragglers and finishing off immobilized hostiles as we speak. How are you faring?" The marsupial commander was on the line in an instant. "I'm afraid we're quite outnumbered, and the Dorton shield are little more than bodies. That said, the technocracy can take out a Shadow Fleet drone in seconds. They can block plasma and standard kinetics real well, but those never-pouched squids are plenty weak to particles moving at 0.98 C. We've had to absorb a few punches, and most of our ships didn't have that dispensable outer shell intact after Malo, but the Terran drones have been acting as a buffer. My feed attributes 8,000 confirmed kills from the 3,000 of us. Not too shabby, huh?" "Indeed. How many losses have you sustained?" "A few hundred Yotl ships down, but the fact we haven't lost more is thanks to the Terrans. They've bled about 2,000 drones to preserve our lives. We could use your numbers to keep the near 20,000 remaining ships off our tail. The Dorton can't seem to do much more than sit slack-jawed and watch." "We do not have the capacity to replace our ships that are lost, so we will play only a supporting role. You just need extra guns, yes?" "Anything's better than nothing, Chief Hunter. We can't be everywhere. You get involved in the picture, and suddenly, assuming you count the Dorton, we have a numerical advantage. As the humans say, we're in business." "Very well. You will have long-range plasma support." "Excellent. Once you arrive into the picture, the Terrans are going to try to convince the Dorton to charge guns blazing. Humans are damn good talkers and all, but by the purification rites, I wish them sincere luck with that. They'll need it. Contact us if there's anything at all you need to relay. Otherwise, let's make some robot calamari." "We are happy to heed that directive. Good fortune, as always." I switched off the line and rerouted my vessels toward various requests for backup sent by the technocracy. The other group of rebel craft, dispatched to pick off a separate group of first-wave leftovers, had also chased their quarry from the system. That left just the drones of the Shadow Fleet. I spotted several Kolshian automatons encroaching on Kalqua's inner sanctum and watched warheads tumble out of their bellies. Before my watching eyes, a Terran drone flung itself in the path of one missile, sparing a metropolis from a city-leveling dispersion. Unfortunately, the other explosives were jettisoned out of interception range. Since the Dorton were not a sapient coalition power, they lacked the missile defense systems that humans have been posting on their affiliated worlds. With more murderous munitions striking Kalqua's flesh, adding to a tally of detonations that was approaching the second 100, I vowed to help the Yotl and the Terrans secure the region. The goal of my rebellion was as much to thwart the Kolshians' aims as the Dominion's now. Both parties presented a threat to the peaceful coexistence I desired.